recording. Alright, so here we are. I'm going to just go ahead and go on up to my tool sets here. My insane bump will run the software real quick. We will go ahead and open new texture details. We will go on down into the projects, and in this case this one is the column demo. This is just sort of hopefully real straightforward. That's why I'm just doing a column. We'll take the granite repeat. Let's see here. I believe that is supposed to be the, I just want to make sure, presets, projects I meant, column demo, granite repeat color. Yeah, okay. Nothing too super exciting. Granite repeat color, and we'll okay that. And when you look at it, this is just a simple granite shader. That's all that's going on here, with a little bit of texture. And let's do a little tweaking real quick before we move on into something else with it and output these. I want a little bit of let's see, bump intensity, put it up to 5. What do we get? Yeah, it gets really grainy. Small detail makes it extra blocky. We don't need all that small detail. Medium detail, maybe a little bit to give it kind of a eroded feel. Shape boost, don't need the shape boost. I think that looks kind of crummy, so we'll tone that down. The AO factor is fine. And that should be good enough. So we'll just go ahead and save texture, right? And as we talked about previously, that does save all my textures except for the AO, which is kind of a weird thing. And I want to talk about the AO real quick, so we're just going to go over to AO map, and we're going to go ahead and save texture. And that means that it's going to repeat normal save the AO, which is not ideal. It's like a bug, I think, but that's okay. We're going to take it. We'll go back in here, go back to preview, and then save one more time to get our normal map back. So now we have our granite repeat color. It did output an AO, a height, a normal, and a spec. We're going to get rid of, well, maybe we'll keep this one just to see what happens, but there you go. Now, at this point, you might want to take these in to Photoshop and mess with stuff, but we're not. We're going to go directly in. I'm just going to do a shader system right now. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my shader box, which is, come on now, hidden off on the side here. Don't hide from me. Come here. And I have been liking doing the Arnold render window, and I'm just going to pop that right on over here. And I have a very straightforward lighting setup here. Sort of straightforward. I'm using the Zoo Tools lighting. So, new shader. And I'm going to make a totally new shader. Let's call it new shader. So we'll go down to Arnold texture, Arnold shader surface, standard surface. And let's call this one pillar shader, and then we'll go ahead and click here and get it to organize for us. And I'm going to take my files here, and I'm just going to start dragging them on in. Right, so here's the color map, here's the AO for later, here is spec, here is height. Where's my height? There we go. Height map. And the normal has to be introduced in a slightly different way. So I'll get that in a second. Alright. So here's everything we need. Granite repeat. Alright, so this is basically node editing process. Hopefully it doesn't throw people off too much, but we're just, you can always review this video. So here's my AO, we'll save that. Here's my granite repeat. So we're just going to take this and plug this into color. And we're going to attach this right away. We're going to take this, we're going to assign it to viewport selection, right? Which sometimes doesn't work quite right. Right, pillar shader. Oh, let's hit play and see. So here we are with sort of our basic shader setup, right? You would want to probably do a render separately each time, just to get your what you need out of it. I'll let that run. And you can see it's very flat right now, so we're gonna attach this height map will go down here for later. This spec will go up here. We will out color input spec to specular color. We will then go down and we need to make our normal map, and for that we specifically want an AI normal map. So this is tab, type in normal map, here's tab AI image, so tab AI normal map, tab AI image. We're going to go in here and input over in the attributor. You can see there's the image name. I'm going to go ahead and bring in the up and down one. Granite repeat normal. Granite repeat normal. Oh, one's really bright. I feel like this one's really dark. Let's try it though and see what we get. So we'll pop that in. And then we can out color to input and out value to normal camera. Let's see what kind of changes are being made here. So we're starting to get a few change ups here. It's now darker. We need to make a slight tweak. Color space. Alright, right now color space needs to be adjusted. We need to go to preferences. We'll go down to color management. You might need to do this. We're going to enable color management on our own so it'll do what we want it to do. It set this sRGB on the normal map to raw. Right. You can see that color adjustment makes a pretty big difference. Alright. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and attach. Our spec is already in. We can actually go in and make some tweaks on this at this point. Because right now it's kind of like, well, I don't see what's happening. Well, that's true. So let's move in a little bit. It is being a little funky. Let me close Arnold Render View. And real quick save scene as column cutscene 3, fine. And let's try another Arnold render. Has to reload, that's probably why it was being weird. We might even get slightly better results going to the renderer viewport Arnold here. They're slightly different than the actual render view though. So at this point what we have here is we have some a little bit of texture, but it still looks pretty flat. So we're gonna have to kind of go in here and mess around a little bit with a few settings. So let's take a look at one. Also the lighting might be, it's pretty, but maybe I should switch it to be a little more daylighty. So if you just pop in a sky dome, it's going to be very specific. So let me make it real simple here. Let's just put in an Arnold area light. And size it up a fair amount. And normalize that. Right, so now you get this very blindingly bright light. We can actually change that spread to be very focused as well. It's just kind of shooting right through here. And we can adjust the exposure and intensity so it's not so savagely bright. That's 6 with exposure down. Alright, so the thing here is that we have very low shine on this object. The weight's at 100%. The weight here is what it is. 0.8's okay. 1, in this case, it doesn't matter. I usually like to turn this up and keep it going so we get full weight on the color, so you can see it. You're like, oh yeah, that's the color of that object. Not so sure about the map here. It's very dark, so I'm not sure I'm liking that map. But I can adjust the roughness. If I go down to 0, what you're going to see is I should get like a shine to the surface. But I won't because that weight's so strong. So like if I break the connection here, let's break the connection. You'll see let's try messing with the normal map. Sometimes you have to work the inverts a little bit. I'm not getting come on now. It's being a little bit of a pain. It's not giving me feedback. And sometimes you need to flip these X, Y, and Z channels. Yeah, that one actually kind of looks maybe the best. So with this on, we should see, I know it's not supposed to be super reflective, but we should be seeing some level of specular reflectivity here. With the roughness set to 0. Let's try a slightly different lighting setup. The thing is, it shouldn't know that it's kind of like stone. It should be like, okay, these edges give you a functional shine. See, there's touches of purple coming off that other block, which shouldn't even be what it is. Let's go ahead and grab that and attach a shader to it. You can see a little tiny bit of normal mapping in there, but not as much as we'd like to see. Let's take this shader and mess with it a little bit more. One way I like to see how things are working, and you can kind of get. You can kind of tell if you go to the transmission. So if I kick that transmission all the way up to 0, it becomes very clear material. And then you can see any nooks and crannies that your maps are making on the object. So in this case, as it renders, you can actually see that it is, like, when its transmission is 0, you see clear through it, or transition's 1. You can see these chunks. So you can see that the normal map is having its effect. It's taking these chunks out. It might just not be a very strong normal map. I could try turning the intensity up. You see these bits and pieces in here. That's showing that there are, in fact, visual effects happening. And sometimes it's hard to see because maybe you got weak lighting or the colors are just very similar, so you're not getting that pop. And so we go to, let's go back to geometry and get in here and tell it to do some, we could up the strength on it, which won't have too much of an effect. If I put it at like 2, for example, it'll probably push these a little bit more in terms of their jagged nature, but it's not gonna, it won't be an end-all be-all. And also, again, this inversion sometimes helps. So even at 1, if I start messing with the inversion again, you can see how it kind of flips some of it around. I was liking the X though, so I'll keep the X. Let's go back and set that. You can see all these little chunks. This isn't just, some of it's the fuzz, the constant fuzz is pixelation, but these big chunks in here is actually the normal map showing that it's having a visual effect. I like to have strong confirmation that something's happening. So let's go back up and get that transmission off. So it's back to my stone pillar. I guess it makes sense that the specular wouldn't actually be very it's old stone, so it shouldn't be very specular. But it sure isn't. I wonder what this one looks like. I'm kind of curious what this one looks like. Out color to specular color. I can see that there's little bits of light particles, so there's probably a little more light reflecting. I can maybe adjust that with the exposure and intensity, but I don't want to mess with these lights too much, you know? Alright. Alright, so let's go ahead and build that AO map anyway, because this is the process. So, the AO map, oh, I gotta go back to my textures here. Granite, gonna repeat. Color. Alright, that's fine. I'll just drag it in. Granite, repeat AO. Now what we're gonna do here is we're gonna take the AO map and we're gonna take the repeat color map, and we're actually gonna build a little multiply function. So we're gonna tab AI multiply and make a multiply node, which is gonna, it's like the same in Photoshop. You multiply, it's gonna make this darker on top of this. It's gonna add shadow effects, right? And then we're gonna also take just a gamma correction, because we might need to correct some of the colors, the light and darkness essentially. So I'm gonna out color to input 1, and I'm gonna drag out color to input 2, and I'm gonna run this down to base color, and it should change it quite drastically actually. See, look at, it's much darker because that multiplies on top, but you can kind of see the cracks a little bit better too. Alright, so what we really need to do then is we need to take this and run it through the gamma correct function over here. So out color to value and out color to base color, and we can gamma correct, and generally speaking you want to take that gamma to a 1.5. So there you go. I accidentally typed in 14, but it demonstrates something. This is RGB. So there's the red, right? Here, this would be the green, and this would be the blue, right? We're going to do like 1.5 to 1.5 by 1.5 for the multiply. Maybe even kick it up to a 2 by 2 by 2. 1.8, 1.5, kind of like that stone color right there. That's me now. I'm messing with like the texture colors by the shaders interpretation by literally playing with the gamma correct, right? So there we go. And I feel like that's starting to look pretty alright. You're getting a lot of detail pulled out of those little divots and stuff. Did I check my image? Is this set to raw? Yeah, okay. And sometimes you can change sort of the things like this color map. Could maybe have... I don't want to set it to raw. I do maybe want to take off the filtering, maybe. It's possible. It probably won't do too much. Alright. So at this point, the pillar's kind of doing what it needs to do. There's an extra layer of shadowing in the ambient occlusion. You can see it. You can see it right through here. As we look at it, there's like these touches of shadow that run here. Now that's light, but there's also the added ambient occlusion. Kind of works to reinforce it. And now if we want to get extra crazy, well, crazy, quote unquote, I'm going to go ahead and drag drop my height map in here. And I'm going to go on up to the standard system here. Where is that? Oh, there it is. I'm going to go to displacement material in here and make a file for it. I probably should have just whatever, but I'll cut this out. It's fine. So we'll take this, and we're just going to pop this on up here, out color into displacement. Oh. Let's undo that. I think it's because it's a special file type. If so, I will do this one, and we'll just pop it in here. It's fine. Is that it? I think it was. Can't help but notice how my TXT files are so much more intense for them. That's okay. Alright, so that doesn't mean that we're done. I'll let that render out for a second and save it real quick. Alright, stop it and go back. Alright, final aspect here. Let's go ahead and select the geometry. We're going to go over to the transform geometry. Sorry, I was already there. P cylinder shape. It should be called pillar. Anyway, we're going to go down to Arnold here. We're going to go to subdivisions and displacement attributes. We're going to turn this on to Cat Clark, which you'll notice immediately kind of rounds out the edges on this piece here. And we probably want to set that usually up to 5. See what that gives you. And then we go on down and we want to set up an auto bump enabling. So already you can see what it's doing here is it's already creating all this extra sort of geometry filler, and it's just exasperating the shapes you already have and all the attributes. Now this is too strong. It's very kind of wrinkly and bubbly. We'll do a save on that. We want to enable an auto bump on it, and we probably want to take that height down to, like, say a 0.3 or something, right? Or maybe even less, maybe a 0.1. Right? So now, well, maybe a little more than 0.1. That's too low. Maybe a 0.5, and maybe up the iterations to 6. The more iterations, the more geometry detail it tries to interpret for you. Yeah, I feel like it's getting a little too thick, so we could probably even take it down more. But notice all the extra detail that now becomes very sort of viable here. I'll go ahead and save it. So when you're looking at the differences, you go from one that has obvious geometry, but it's the cuts and the hard shapes are actually kind of taking away some from the minuscule detail, versus here where we're still getting a pillar, but now there's a little more detailing. I think this could still go down further. 0.2 or something. Also, this tends to show up a little differently in this Arnold renderer. What? What? Yeah, see the displacement that's here, there's a displacement that should be on here, is not showing up nearly as strong as it does in the other one. Oh, I didn't adjust this geometry. That's my mistake. This one also needs an adjustment. I don't know what happened to this other one, though. It vanished on me. That's weird. I'll have to figure out why I did that. Maybe I accidentally hit the hide key. Alright, so... subdivision. Cat Clark. Iterations. I feel like I almost don't need more iterations in the way that it works. But we'll do 6 again. Why not? And leave a lot of them up here. Ah, just making it disappear. Why though? It's weird. That's really weird. I wonder if it's just too much to... It might be just too much, maybe, for the window renderer? I'll have to double check on that. Anyway. You can see, though, how over here, this is it's a pretty decent looking pillar at this point. Very rounded, and it's still got a lot of textured shape to it. There's very little specular on it, but you're getting what you kind of want out of it. I mean, I've taken it away from these really hard-edged shapes. That's what the displacement map's going to do. It's going to try and interpret as if it were a shape. So now the pillar itself has this very authentic, I guess. It does look like a very worn, ancient pillar, and that's what the stonework shaders that I made were for. It's sort of like it's weathered pillar, right? And it looks pretty weathered to me. It looks good. It's kind of hitting what I want. There's a nice little bit of lighting going on here. So there you go. That is the quick rundown